It's fantastic to be with you and welcome to this Stronger Network session. I am Chris Dixon and today we're going to be talking through managing the crazy, how to run a small business without the rest of your life imploding. And, I suppose this is a bit of a different session for me. Sometimes I'm talking to groups of people about management and leadership. Sometimes I'm talking about IT, but today I thought I would try something that's a little bit more personal, because getting through life, working out what your sense of purpose is, finding out how to kind of contribute to the world and sync that up with your faith is something that can be very rewarding, but can also be challenging. And so what I wanted to do today, really, or the plan, if you like, for today, is just to share some thoughts. And I hope that you'll take those thoughts in the kind of honest way that I'm going to try and present them. In no way have I answered the question fully as to what I'm supposed to be doing on this planet and how things like my faith synchronize in with the business things I do. But I hope that through the experience that I've had, we'll be able to explore a few of those things, if you like. So, just to give you a rough idea, do feel free to post questions in the chat and I will do my best to answer those. You can do those as we go along, if you like. And also we've got a poll that's open in the poll section. So you can go over and have a look at that. And that's kind of, I think in terms of some of the content we've got, we might not get to all of it. So the idea is by participating in that poll, it'll give me an idea of the topics that you're kind of most interested in. So do head over to that and give that a vote. Hope that all makes sense. If not, ask me in the chat. Okay, so my plan really for our time together, I want to give you a little bit of background about me and sort of why I'm here talking to you and what I do. And then I'm going to present the kind of set of things that I think could make your life implode, and some of that's based on personal experience with myself trying to run multiple things in the business world, in the world of work, and in the world of faith and my life. A few sort of things that I've thought through over the years and I've come across. And then for the rest of the session, we're going to hopefully use that poll to drill into a few of those topics in a little bit more detail. My hope here is that it's very kind of honest, but also very practical. And I want to kind of share with you some of the practical things I found that have stopped me sort of falling off the track, if you will. And again, I'm not perfect. I regularly kind of fall off the track. I'm not quite sure it's an implosion, but there are things that you can do in order to be more effective and to stop your life imploding. So hopefully we'll stick true to the title. So I hope that makes sense. Let's crack on. I've got a few slides. So first of all, a little bit about me. What do I do? Why am I here? So I do multiple things. And if you ask my wife and family, they'll always say too many things. And if you ask me, sometimes too many things. I have several day jobs. So I work at the University of Lancaster, where I have a job title called Head of IT Partnering and Innovation. I work up to sort of 4 days a week there at the moment. That involves quite a big leadership role. I lead a team of 15 software developers. We build software, mobile apps. We have a remit to deliver innovation. We've just recently worked on a voice and chat project with Amazon. So the role there is kind of leading a team, getting involved in strategy, managing budgets, large budgets, multi-million pound budgets, leadership and management, if you like. The second part of the day job is I am a co-director of a local company called TCRA Events. And that's an events management company. So we provide audio, visual, sound mixers, video mixers, lighting, smoke, lasers, whatever you need, really, for people to run events. Very challenging in the pandemic times, although we've been doing a lot more sort of video streaming and things like that. And I say I run that with a co-director, so there's two of us, and we're both working part-time and investing some time into running the business as well. It's not a massive business. We serve kind of areas in the northwest, do sometimes go further afield, and do a lot of work for sort of the public sector, churches, universities, conferences, that kind of thing. Day job number 3, which gets fit in, and I've been doing this for the last 5 or 6 years, is coaching and mentoring. And some of that came out of the work that I did in leadership and management. So coaching and mentoring is about working with individuals, sometimes teams, in businesses, do work for universities, and helping people to kind of achieve their goals. I always describe coaching as kind of holding up a mirror to people and letting them see themselves in new and different ways. Often people will bring a challenge that they have to a coaching session. So it could be how I work and manage more effectively. Sometimes people will be referred from their business with a particular need, and through a structured process of conversation, if you like, which is very action focused, we kind of work through issues and things like that. And that's something that I came to relatively recently, so probably in the last 5 years, and something that I'm really enjoying. And I'll talk maybe a bit about how you balance all of these things together, because I think that's quite important. But it's an area that's expanding for me at the moment, and I kind of really enjoy people answering their challenges and working with them to kind of help them along the journey, if you like. I'm very happy to talk more about some of that. We'll see where we get to. Day job 3.5, I've called it, is all my kind of church stuff. So I enjoy leading worship in my local church, St Thomas's in Lancaster. Also very involved in the technical side of things. So at the moment, running video streams, editing video content, running the sort of Sunday live services, installing audio visual equipment, all of that kind of stuff. And in terms of sort of things outside the job, love IT, love tech, love playing piano, love worship leading. I do have a family. I've got 2 kids, 16 and 14, that are currently downstairs doing their live lessons in lockdown. I'm married, and I'm 44 years old. So that's a little bit about me. Yeah, Anthony in the chat. Yeah. Yeah, one of the things that's always been a challenge is I kind of want to do everything. And it was a revelation to me, which we'll get on to talking about, that you can actually do multiple things, and that you can work them together, and that's fine. But that brings with it its own level of challenge, I guess. Obviously, on this network, we're talking about the role that our faith plays, and I just wanted to set things in context with a verse, really. So Romans 12:2 is something that I keep coming back to. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. And that verse is both a huge encouragement and a massive challenge, and it works on so many different levels. So just taking that first bit, you know, I found for me in my early life, the pattern of this world was you go out to work, you get a job, you build for your retirement, build your pension plan, and have a nice kind of steady job. And in fact, I'm realizing that doesn't have to be the pattern. There's a kind of discovery that you go on, and expanding out into coaching and some of the other business is something that I've discovered in the last sort of 5 or 10 years. So something there about conformity. I think the other thing is there's a lot of norms around the business world about things like being ruthless, you know, how we price stuff. There's that saying, you know, all's fair in love and business and all that kind of stuff. And actually, that's something that as Christians, we don't and shouldn't have to conform to. And I'm sure in some of the other sessions, they'll be talking about, you know, how you price for the church community and some of those kind of issues. One thing that I'll just mention here, I felt very strongly in the coaching side of my work that it was good to have a number of pro bono clients every year, so I can provide free services to people that don't have the money to pay for coaching, which can be quite expensive. So I have sort of 5 or 6 slots each year, which I fill, and I do that for free, and that kind of helps with some of that. Anthony's got a good question on multitasking. We'll come back to that in a minute. The second part of that verse, a process of faith and mind renewal, and there's a whole bunch of stuff we could talk about there in terms of mindfulness, in terms of the quiet time, and in terms of the sort of daily routine that I've set up for myself, and maybe we can get into some of that. And then that last section, testing and approving what God's will is. That's a massive topic, isn't it? And as people come to coaching, often the challenge is, what should I be doing? What's my place on this earth? Those kind of questions. And have I worked those out? No, but there are things that we can do to kind of understand more about what that is. So let's get into some talk about the kind of things that could and have caused my life to implode in small or big ways. And again, in the poll, you can kind of vote on which ones of these you think are the most appropriate. We could talk a little bit more about techniques to avoid it. So for me, there's a few common things that can cause people's life to implode. And one of those is kind of loss of a sense of purpose. And kind of, I went through this in that I started at the university. I was involved in leading people, managing people, but that job felt kind of pedestrian. And I got this thought maybe around my 35, 40s that I should really be doing a bit more good in the world. I wanted to investigate things that I was interested in, my AV skills, and also use my management skills that I'd gained and those coaching skills for a different reason. But some people are at different points on that journey, and finding a sense of purpose in what you're doing is definitely part of the picture of kind of getting that balance right. The second thing I found, and again in a lot of coaching, is this kind of burden of responsibility, especially if you're taking on a lot of things. So I'm doing coaching, which involves working very closely and sometimes one-on-one with people, a lot of responsibility there, big responsible job at the university, and trying to run a business, make sure that I get my tax returns in, keep that going, actually, deliver for people when we're running events. And if you're not careful, and especially if there's only you in that, you can feel this huge burden of responsibility. And if you're not careful, that can get quite difficult and quite crushing. The third one there is the idea of time management. I'm a creative person at heart, and I've always found managing my diary, my commitments and my tasks something that's quite difficult and challenging. I found a system that works. We can talk a little bit more about that. But I think that can be a challenge for people, especially if you're not naturally organized, but you've got a desire to be doing a lot of stuff. The next one is burnout, and that's something that I have definitely experienced, and I can certainly say a little bit more about that. They're kind of linked to the other last two as well. But if we don't get some of that balance right, then we can get to a point where we just collapse and fall down, and being honest about that and talking about that can be quite helpful. That's linked to the last two, work-life balance. I wonder if you've ever had that feeling of guilt. I should be spending more time with my kids, with my family, with my wife. I'm doing too much on the business, on the work side. And again, that's a common theme in coaching that we come to, and it's something that I've had to constantly work through and work at. And the last one, kind of difficult topic really to talk about, but it's something, again, I've got some personal experience of, and we can talk a little bit more about that. And that's depression, especially men, maybe something that's not as always talked about. I have a really good friend who's a GP, and she said to me, sometimes it's the people that do the most that are life's copers, that are always seen sort of front and center in the church, in their business world, their leadership, that seem so sort of sorted, and they can be the people that fall the hardest. That can be quite challenging. So that was my premise for this talk. That's the list of things that I think in my personal experience and working with people that I coach are some of the problem areas, if you like. So we'll definitely get into some of those in a bit more detail and answer your questions on them as well. Just wanted to tell you a few sort of revolutions in my thinking that have come over the years, which have really helped me with some of those. This may seem an obvious one, but you can have more than one vocation and do more than one thing. For many years, I assumed, and you might think this is crazy, that you can only have one job and you can't really pack anything else into your life. That is not true. Through a period of through some coaching and some investigation of that and looking at the things that really drove me, I was able to reduce my hours in my main job at the time at the university and start to work on things like the AV business and in coaching. And actually, nowadays we have fantastic tools where we can work virtually, and we have tools to build businesses, to do things from the comfort of our home. And it is easier than ever to have multiple vocations, multiple careers. That obviously comes with a challenge, some of the other things we spoke about. But that was a revolution for me. Again, I've been on a journey with this. You can sometimes help by helping less, and that's an interesting paradox, I think. But I have a tendency sometimes to want to make everything perfect. And actually, there's a real power in delegating, in being able to see others grow. They may not do things exactly how you would do them, but through delegating things to them and sharing some of that responsibility and empowering them, you can actually get more done in the long run and have quite a powerful outcome. It's okay to say no is my next one. Very, very hard. Always trying to work on this. I have a friend, a minister actually, who says with every yes comes a no. And that's something I really like to have in my head when someone asks me to do a new job. Don't always do it, but asking that question and saying, well, what can I actually drop out of the portfolio in order to do that can be quite helpful. There are ways and tools and techniques that you can use to manage your time and tasks. I said I'm a creative person. I found a system that works for me now so that I can be sure that I'm on top of my task list and that everything has gone out of my head and into my system. And I can certainly talk more about that. You're not alone, even if you think you are. There are networks of people in your work, in your business life that you can plug into, networks like this. And of course, my faith is hugely important, that I'm not alone. God is present, not just in the Sunday life, but in my working life, in the decisions that I make. And I found that if I make time and prioritize, my Bible study, my quiet time, my prayer life, time with my life group, then actually that can be really practically helpful in working out some of these issues as well. So just before we work out which ones of these we're going to delve into in more detail. Yes, just look at the poll. Great. Hannah, yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Guilt can be a feeling that people come with when they've changed roles. But I think really that's a healthy sign. I've met very few people that have one sort of career goal in mind when they're at school or when they're a young person, and then they follow it through. Sometimes, doctors, GPs, things like that. But a lot of the time when people come to coaching, we change, we grow, we develop, we learn as we go through life. And actually being able to do multiple different things, either at the same time or switch them, I think is really good and healthy. So yeah, thank you for that. So here's the ways I think you can break out of some of those problems. Finding a sense of purpose. I mean, these are just kind of the ante of the previous slide, but we'll talk about these a bit more. So, finding a sense of purpose, always tricky. That's a constant journey for me, and I'm not sure I'll ever get there, but there's things we can do and think about to help us with that. And minimizing that burden of responsibility, getting good at time management, reducing the likelihood of some of those things like burnout, improving work-life balance, and recognizing and dealing with depression, if you like. So that's my list. And I think for the rest of the session, I was going to talk a little bit more about some of those. So I'll just head over to the poll. You've picked the hard ones. Okay, we'll do them in the order that your poll says, and we'll see how many we kind of get through, and then do post some observations in the chat as well. Okay, so first of all, let's do finding a sense of purpose. I'll give you some thoughts on that. So these are drawn from my personal experience and also from some of the coaching work. So first of all, a recommendation. There's a Christian book called The Purpose-Driven Life by Rick Warren. I don't know if you've read that. It's very practical. It takes you through a program. I think it lasts 40 days with some spiritual content, but really giving you some tools to think through what it is that you were kind of put on the earth for, what your kind of natural gifts might be. I know several people in the church that I've worked with that have found that book really useful. So it's a very practical recommendation that you could try. From the coaching side of things, some of the tools that I work with are all around paying attention to the common sort of things that drive you. Now, they might not be immediately obvious because they're sometimes so ingrained in how you work and what you do that you don't even notice them. So I'll give you a practical example. I went through some coaching maybe about 10 years ago now when I was working full-time at the university, and I was starting to sort of feel a sense of unease that I wasn't quite getting the balance right. And I drew a huge mind map, and on that mind map, I tried to put down the things that I did. And that's a fairly easy thing to do because you can go through your calendar. But then to ask the question, well, which of these things am I naturally good at? Which of these things do I really enjoy doing and get a sense of pleasure from? And that was everything from, playing with the kids, family time, some of my hobbies, music, audio, visual. And then we went through that mind map and sort of asked the question, which one of these things do I do as a hobby? Which of these things could I do as business, if you like? And that was really useful. And I ended up with several things, including the kind of audio visual stuff and including some of the coaching and mentoring work that I was doing. And actually that led me on a journey to be starting the TCRA events AV business and doing some of my coaching. And actually it also changed some of the hobbies that I do. I realized I had a passion for flying light aircraft. And I did explore whether there was a way of bringing that into the business side of things. And in the end, I decided that was a hobby I could focus on. And so I now have a great time with that. So that could be something that very practical that you could try, go through your calendar, write out the things you do, and then analyze it and ask the question, is there a way that I could use this in my business world? Is there a way that I can amplify this in my personal life? And also pay attention for stuff that you might just need to completely get rid of. And there was some things for me that I was doing where I thought, well, that's not actually adding any value. Why am I doing that? Let's get rid. Some more practical ideas on this. Some people really enjoy the idea of creating a sort of life vision statement, looking maybe 10 years, 15, 20 years into the future and writing down the kind of things that you want to achieve. That can be quite useful. Works really well for people that enjoy writing and reflecting. If you write a diary or a journal, that can be quite a useful tool for you there. And if you're struggling with some of that, I sometimes explore the question of what makes people sort of happy and fulfilled, and they really struggle with it. Interestingly, often IT developers don't really do very well with this. But using things to kind of help with that. So looking at, old journals, even old Facebook posts, photos, going through the photo album and looking at things that you've achieved, it can just rekindle those memories and those thoughts of what it is that makes you happy. So that's another practical way that you can explore that. There's not going to be any one thing that's going to work for you, but, some of these are hopefully ideas. And the final one, pray and meditate. I went through a real journey in my prayer life, which ended up with spending a lot more time meditating and listening. And so my daily routine now is focused on a very short part of the Bible, maybe a verse or just a couple of verses. I have a meditation app that I use, which does 10 minutes of sort of traditional style meditation, and then I have a period of listening. And actually it's incredible how often God can speak through that in a very practical way. Is that particular business decision that you're doing right? Should I be reaching out to this person again? Have I kind of made the right call? It really gives you time to reflect, and in a very practical way, not all the time, hear what God is saying to you. So that's some thoughts on finding a sense of purpose. Let me know in the chat if that's helpful, or if there's any other things on that. What's the next one? Work-life balance. Yes. Okay. Let's spin forward to do that. We can come back to some of the other ones. Yeah. Work-life balance. So the thing I'd say about this is it can be quite hard to recognize that you're not getting that right. I had a period of time at the university where I was working long hours into the evening, and not just that, I was thinking about things into the evening. I was struggling to sleep a little bit. I'd have things running through my mind. So the kind of clues that that's going wrong is this kind of general unhappy feeling. I think someone in the chat mentioned guilt. Yeah, sometimes just feeling unhappy about the time that you spend on your work tasks, and this kind of general sense that things are not in balance. And again, that's something that we sometimes come out with in a coaching conversation. One of the number one things I found was friends and family holding you accountable for that. So, you know, my wife would say, you know, do you realize that I've not seen you for the last 5 evenings and you've been working on things? So that can be another helpful sign. How do you deal with that? Well, it's tricky. I guess at a very simple level, you can reduce the amount of time you spend on work and increase the amount of time you spend on family, but that's hard to do, right? So for me, there's a list here which you can see. So work smart, not long. With that, I mean looking at ways that you can really work quickly and effectively, very practical things. Give you a practical example. I have a set of shortcuts that I use for email. When people ask me questions that I frequently get to answer, I can now reply to them with just, you know, one single keystroke. So a lot of the time people are asking me for quotes, for information about, you know, audio visual, IT recommendations. Staff are asking for policies and procedures on things. I found myself typing emails that would take 1-2 minutes of time to send. Now, single click, I can get that off and done. Also make a lot of use of automation. So on the business side, when invoices come in, when emails come in a certain form, they can be automatically processed. And that's freeing me up to do a different kind of activity or to spend more time not doing kind of admin type things. So that's what I mean by working smart, not long. Linked to that, you know, we don't have to be a perfectionist on everything. There are things that are just good enough. Yeah, where can we learn more about automating tasks? Well, I use something called Text Expander. There's various other software for that on Windows and Mac and on your phone. So looking for the topic of text expansion is useful. There's some automation around that. You can automate a lot of your kind of file management. I use something called Hazel on the Mac. There's tools for Windows as well. So I guess file management automation would be the thing to Google for there. And also there's a lot more workflow tools on the market now. The Office 365 suite, which a lot of people have a thing called Microsoft Flow, where you can do some of that automatic and kind of workflow processing. So they're all good things to look for. Yeah, perfection is an interesting thing. Sometimes good enough is good enough. And actually, I set myself very high standards, and sometimes they don't need to be that high. Perhaps slightly cheekily, I could say, in a church context, you know, sometimes my video edit that just chops the start and chops the end is good enough. And really, it's recognizing where you want to focus your time. Which things do you want to make absolutely stand out, you know, amazing, and which things are you just going to get on with it and do. Another obvious one there, make every minute of non-work time count. You know, if I analyze my evenings, sometimes sitting down and watching Netflix and Amazon is fine because it's downtime and it's giving you something. But a lot of the time, is that the most appropriate use of time? Could I be doing other kind of family things? And again, that's very much a journey. And I think a lot of us have found the opportunity to have more family time in lockdown. But that's something we can look at. The idea of unplugging from your tech, that's another practical thing that you can do. I've experimented with turning the internet off at various times of the day, or having a day where I don't look at Instagram, Facebook, email, and things like that. Hazel, Hazel, it's a Mac tool for automation. Spelt as you've done it in the chat there. Hannah. Email signatures. I've got that. So I've got a shortcut set up for, I type C SIG, which is my normal signature, C for Chris, T SIG, which is my TCRA signature, and W SIG for my work signature. So within 4 or 5 keystrokes, I can get whichever signature I need. So that's all great. And if you start thinking in that mindset, you start to discover all these ways that you can automate stuff, and it can be really empowering. The final one there is to change some of the sort of underlying structures of the way that you work. That's the one. So from an organizational point of view, are things set up in the right way? And again, I'm thinking more about my work at the university here. I got to a time where I was taking on everything, and actually through restructuring and delegating, you can find a way to kind of free up some time. So hopefully those are some practical things. We could talk for hours on automation. I absolutely love that. There's nothing more satisfying than seeing an email come into your inbox and be automatically processed and answered without you having to do anything, and not having to spend that time. So that's really good. Yes. Okay. Let's pick another one. Option C in the poll. So time management. How are we doing? How am I doing for time? I'm doing all right. Time management. Right. I'm going to recommend you a book here that I found really useful. It's called Getting Things Done. It's by David Allen. I went through 15 years of trying various time management techniques, day to a page diaries, task lists, journals, magic books with squared paper that you tick stuff on. I didn't find anything that worked. The thing I found is the principles that are in that book, which is up on the slide. And the basis of the system, which can be implemented, on anything from paper to a full kind of IT system, is about getting stuff out of your head. And this, for me, has been quite transformational. So there are no tasks which I need to do that I'm currently got in my head. I could bring some to mind now. I need to go to the post office later, but they're all captured in my system, and I can see on any given day the things that I need to achieve and get done on that day. And that extends to all the kind of projects in my life, doing decorating, spending time with the kids, even the daily tasks of putting the recycling boxes out. And at one time, I even had the nights that I was going to have a bath on, although I kind of stopped that now. It's a really great book. You can implement it in a number of different ways, but that principle of freeing up your mind from the need to keep all of these tasks in your head, I think, is quite empowering. And what is shown on that slide is it's based on this 4-step process, and then showing that you collect everything and get it into the system. So the book talks about thinking through, how many different collection points do you have for tasks? Well, my wife gives me tasks. I get them via email. They come in through the post box. I've got multiple different email accounts for the business. I have people chatting to me on the streets. I have stuff from the kids, all of these different collecting points. So rationalizing those. I have a daily process that goes through my inbox and my task lists. My inboxes are 0 every single day. So I start the day, let's say 10 o'clock, with a 0 inbox. And I've managed to do that pretty much consistently for the last year or so. And it is unbelievably freeing. There's then a process every day, processing and organizing tasks. And then critically, a once a week process where you take a sort of overview and work out how things are moving forward. So it's this constant cycle of collecting stuff, processing it, organizing it, and review it. GTD apps, yes. I On the Mac, again, there's an app, or on the iPhone, there's an app called OmniFocus, which is quite good. You can use any task management system really to support that workflow. Yeah, Inbox Zero is amazing, Hannah. Todoist is another one that I've seen people use. Yeah, that's the one. The Todoist app is really great. And the key things are that you need something that will organize your tasks into projects and contexts. So a project is a grouping. So like painting the front room would be a project. The context is where you can do the task. So for example, I can only buy new fish fingers when I'm at the shop. So that will be at the shop. I have contexts for all of the people that I work with, so that when I see them for a meeting or when I bump into them in the corridor, I know what I've got to ask them about. You can even, if you get the book, you can even do it on, pen and paper and index cards if you want. So there are some great tools out there. The thing to Google is Getting Things Done and tools, and you'll find loads more as well. Final thing on that slide is the 4Ds. This is how I process my inbox. So I think, Hannah, if you dream of Inbox Zero, this is how you're going to do it. So, the 4Ds, do it, delete it, delegate it, defer it, in that order. So do it. If it takes less than 2 minutes to do, you might as well just do it, because otherwise it's going to take longer to process it. So if an email comes in, can you tell me what time the meeting is next week? Yeah, you just fire that off, less than 2 minutes. Delete it. How often do people send you stuff that you don't really need? Do you really need to keep that report? Do you really need that in your inbox? The only thing I keep in my inbox is my sent items. Very occasionally, I've run into a problem with that. But the advantage of not having to keep sort of emails has massively outweighed any disadvantage of losing things, believe me. So can you just delete it? Delete it. Third one, if these are in order, delegate it. How often can you give that to someone else? Can you just take a look at this? I've had this email, I'll talk to you about it in my next, our next one-to-one. You get on and do it. And finally, and this is why it's last, defer it. So that's when it goes into my task system, and I then schedule it in my calendar and kind of get around to doing it. So that's a simple kind of 4 principled process that you can use to actually get out of your inbox and get things down to 0. Yeah, loads of great resources in the chat there. Getting things done. Just search Getting Things Done. Plenty of people have found different ways of interpreting those principles, but I think that can be really good. Minimize your burden of responsibility. Yes, that was a good one, wasn't it? Here we go. On the slide there, a model called the cycle of delegation. This is something that you can use. So if you've got something that only you can do, and that's taking up a whole bunch of time, and you want to get rid of it because you want to move on to something else, or more positively, you want to empower others to be able to do it, this is a little model you can use. So I'll walk you through the example I've just gone through. This was video streaming in a church context. So I was the only person that could run the video stream system for a Sunday morning, and therefore I was spending every Sunday morning doing it. Dead simple model. Starter, I do. So that's your starting point. You're doing it. You're knowledgeable about it. You know how to do it. Then you move around to I do, you watch. So you have the person come in and you say, look, I'm gonna do the job, and I want you to watch me. And then after that, asking any questions and that kind of stuff, giving them an idea of seeing it done right. Then round to you do, I watch. Speaks for itself. You watch. You give feedback, what was really good, what could be improved, and then finally you move to the kind of you do. So in some ways, that's a really kind of obvious model, but I find that actually thinking about areas of your life where you could apply that, and people that you could work with that model can be quite useful. And I've seen in a coaching context this be quite empowering. So I've taken people who are super busy. We've identified things that at first they don't think can be delegated. We've identified people that they could delegate to, and we've walked through that model. And it's been really powerful in freeing up time, if you like. The Other things you can do, mentoring and coaching. So mentoring, the idea of getting experience from other people. So meeting with a mentor. Is there someone that you can meet up with every month, every couple of months, usually outside your sphere of work or business? Maybe someone that you aspire to be, or someone that you really would enjoy talking to. Can you approach them and ask them to be a mentor? Coaching is another good thing. Can you find a coach that you can work with? Is there one thing in your life that you've always struggled with and you want to have some transformational change? Perhaps a short session of coaching, 3 or 4 sessions, action focused, could be something that's really good. And the third one there is networking, and that's what we're doing here. We're talking about issues. I find that sometimes people, don't really do that. They get stuck, especially in a church context. They can get stuck in a way of working on their own, and they don't reach out. But there are networks available. I mean, we're doing a talk for the Stronger Network here, and so I'd encourage you to network, to work with others. There are people out there that are going to have the same problems that you do. Okay, how are we doing for time? We're still okay. Anthony's asking a question. How do you deal with the idea that multitasking is doing lots of things badly instead of one thing well, finding ways to focus and give full attention to the one thing, and then shifting focus when engaging with the other thing, knowing that invariably the lines can blur? Yeah, that is a great question, Anthony. So what I would say on that, different people are able to multitask at different levels. There are some very practical things that you can do. There's a technique called the Pomodoro technique, and you'll find information if you Google on that, which splits your time into small chunks so that you're working on single tasks at a time and you're 100% focused on them, but you're switching quite regularly. That's quite useful for people that get easily bored and find it hard to work on sort of one task consistently. The other thing that I would say on that is my point that I think I made a little bit earlier. Do you really need to do everything really well, or can some of those things be quite good enough? So I think somewhere between those two sort of thoughts, you might find some answers there. That's a great question. Thank you. Yeah, there you go. Loads of useful links in the chat as well for you. Pomodoro technique can be really good. The other thing is I use a piece of hardware called a time timer, which is a very simple idea. It's just a very visual kind of pie chart representation that ticks down. That works really well for stuff that I don't want to work on. Really difficult tasks. I don't want to write that document. I'm not motivated. I put 45 minutes on the clock and I watch the pie chart tick down, and I commit to myself. I say, after 45 minutes, I'm going to have a chocolate biscuit and a drink. But I'm going to focus for the next 45 minutes and get on and do it. And that can be hugely helpful. You'll be amazed how much better you can do in a focused 45 minutes rather than just letting the task kind of drift off for the rest of the day as well. Great question, Anthony. Thank you. Do post any more questions in the Q&A and in the chat, because we're kind of coming into land. Let's perhaps do one more. What else do we have in the poll? Yeah, here's some thoughts about reducing the likelihood of burnout. I've included a model here. This is from a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. I rather suspect Stephen Covey is a Christian, but he doesn't explicitly say so. It's a really good book to read, a kind of classic text. But around the edge, you won't be able to read it, but that blue band around the edge is called Sharpen the Saw. He talks about this idea that you have to be doing things that are balancing out and enabling you to be more effective. So just there on the slide, physical things, beneficial eating, exercising, resting, making social connections, stuff for learning, taking on new knowledge, reading, writing, teaching others. And again, the spiritual side of things. And for me, this can be quite wide. Spending time in nature, I find that a great way of connecting with God and expanding the kind of spiritual and faith aspects of my life. And that's a revelation, really, that I've come to more recently. It's not just about your time in church, having a quiet time, your life group stuff. So much music, art, those are the kind of things that you need to be doing. And in the Stephen Covey model, he talks about that band that goes all the way around the edge. It supports all those other things. And without that kind of balanced program of renewal, there's a real danger that you can lead to things like burnout. Yeah, since we've got a few seconds left, I'll finish with the last one, and just really to share personally, it is possible to get into a place where you're really depressed, and depression is a medical thing, right? And sometimes when we have people that are dealing with a whole bunch of things, busy lives, they don't spot it. And for me, all of those things that are on the slide there are the kind of signs that will help you recognize that you may have something which is depression and that you need to get it dealt with. And it's not an easy thing, I think, especially sometimes in men, to realize that. For me, it was people telling me and saying, actually, your cheerful, bouncy self that you always are has not been present for the last 6 months, a year. You've changed. Kind of what's going on. This is an intervention kind of idea. So and as I said at the start, sometimes it's the people that are the most competent and doing the most things and the most sort of level-headed on the outside that fall the hardest. So I think this is a really important thing to watch out for. Now, hopefully, if you're applying some of the other techniques that we've talked about, you're finding a way to avoid this. But I think it's really important to recognize that it is a thing. And the key things are on the right-hand side of the slide there. It's to acknowledge that there's an issue, to own that issue, and to go and get help. So for me, this was a couple of years ago when I was really struggling with how much stuff I had on. People were telling me that I was changing. And actually that was about saying, do you know what? I've not got this right. I need help. Get myself to the GP, got on the tablets, got on the happy pills, and started to make some changes in some of the things that we've talked about on the slide today, which are really easy to write on a slide, but sometimes super hard to actually do. And through that, we're able to work through it and get in a better place, if you like. So there we go. We got through them all. Some concluding thoughts from me then, before we finish. I would encourage you to kind of play with some of these ideas, to really look critically at how you're spending your time and why you're spending your time on things. Consider some of those tools and techniques that we've talked about. Plenty of those you can work through yourself. Also encourage you to get help, whatever that looks like. We've talked about mentoring, we've talked about coaching, we've talked about networks, and this network, if you're looking for a network, is a really great one. All the links and stuff are in the chat. And perhaps finally, don't neglect the kind of spiritual side of things, your daily practice. If you have that, I really encourage you, in terms of meditation, in terms of talking to God, and in terms of listening as well. Are we ever going to get this completely right? Probably not. But just coming back to where we started with Romans 12:2, the renewing of your mind. And for me, that's a constant process. Am I there? No. Am I being transformed by the renewing of my mind? Hopefully I am. And hopefully that's leading me to discover what God's will is for me today, tomorrow, and in the future as well. So I hope you've really enjoyed that. I'm going to sign off now and say thank you. It's been a little bit different for me, a kind of different subject and a different way of sharing, but I hope you found it useful. It's been really great to be with you on the Stronger Network, and I hope that you're able to find some of the other sessions useful and helpful as well. So thank you very much. Bye.